If you give it a couple seconds,
Okay.
should be live. Yep.
Okay, so welcome to this virtual cabinet panel on the environment, which has been conducted with officers and members at various locations, communicating with via audio, video, and online. And there's also an opportunity for the public and press to listen and view proceedings. We also have some contributors with us here this evening to provide some input and feedback. Before the meeting starts, I'd like to ask the committee member and scrutiny officer, Abby Hamilton, to take a roll call to check that members, officers, and registered speakers are all in attendance. Abby.
Yeah. So got Councillor Steve Jarvis.
Yeah, I'm here.
Councillor George Davies.
Good evening.
Councillor Juan Cowell.
Hello.
Councillor Michael Muir.
Present.
Councillor Gerald Morris.
Yep, I'm here.
Ruben.
Present.
Georgina Chapman.
Present.
Oh, I missed a councillor. Councillor Chris Hinchliffe.
Hi, I'm here.
Helen Pollock.
Yes, I'm here.
And Sue Lyons. Oh. I think we have people in the waiting room as well. There you go.
Okay, we're all done then, Abby?
Yes.
Okay, so we've got apologies from Councillor Stania and I think Councillor Allen. Are there any other apologies? No? Okay.
Steve Val Bryant's just turned up.
Oh, I see. Welcome, Val. Okay. Right, then we move on to the minutes of the meeting on the 22nd of July. Is everyone happy that they're an accurate record and that we should approve those? Yep.
Affirmative.
Agreed. Thanks very much. Notification of other business, there isn't any. Chairman's announcements, well, you're all very welcome to be here. As I think I mentioned earlier, the meeting is being audio recorded as well as filmed, and the audio recordings are available to view on the ModGov, and the film recording via the NHDC YouTube channel. And your members are reminded about declarations of interest in the normal way. I'll look out the right this evening. Notification of other business, there is no other business, which moves us on to item 6, the information note. Ruben.
Thank you, Chair. Evening, members and audience. I'm just going to pick out some of the highlights from the information note of the work the policy team's been doing, and I think we'll sort of come to some of those things later on in the evening. First off, contributions to the Hertfordshire Climate Change and Sustainability Partnership, which members will be aware is partnership of the 10 districts, the County Council and the Local Enterprise Partnership. We're still working to progress the action plans against water, biodiversity, carbon reduction and transport, and we're looking at the revised versions as we're going on. I think we're reconvening the subgroups to give them a refresh. At the moment, one of the biggest things that came out of that partnership was the Solar Together scheme, which we launched in August, and we remained open until the 27th, and that was around the bulk purchase of solar panels and battery storage at a below market rate through an auction. Hertfordshire as a whole had 10% more expressive interest than was expected, so that totaled around 13,000. As a district, we had around 2,000 registrations, which was one of the highest. I think at the moment now, I Choose, who are the lead on this, are now completing. I think offers have actually gone out in it says mid-October. I think offers have gone out for residents to decide whether they want to accept their offer or not. So clearly we'll keep you guys in the loop as to how that goes. We've also been done as a policy team work around carbon emissions assessments, which we'll plan to bring to the panel shortly. We've also supported the Green Festival at Letchworth and Royston recently. I think that's gone down quite well. I think some of the members here have attended those as well. I'm sure Sue will chip in and let us know how that went down with the members of the public. One of the big things I want to mention today, we've been talking around about the local walking and cycling infrastructure plan, and some of you will be aware that there's consultation going on. The information notes the dates that have happened so far. The remaining dates, one is in Nebworth on the 20th of October from the afternoon 3:15 to about 7:30 at St Martin's Parish Centre. There's two in Baldock, one on the 31st of October and then one on the 3rd of November, both at the Baldock Community Centre. If you haven't been along, I encourage you to go. If not, can you advertise that? Because I think Edward Lee's doing some sterling work on bringing those plans to people's attentions, and the engagement is there for residents to look at what the county council are proposing. The last thing I wanted to say around the action tracker is that there is, around the anti-idling policy, Herts County Council have a micro site called Let's Clean the Air, which builds on their Clean Air Day of last year, it probably was this year, but it feels like last year. It informs and assists and keeps residents up to date on the latest developments there, so I encourage you to look at that. And I asked Edward about the business service improvement plan. As yet, funds have yet to be allocated to the county council, so that plan is in train, but I'll let you know when we have some more firm details. And that's what I really want to say tonight. I know we've got other people on tonight. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Ruben. I think the Solar Together scheme went really well, and I know that there are people who have had their offers, and some of them say they're really impressed by them, and some of them say they're not. But you know, that always happens with these things, doesn't it? So I think that really went well, and I was pleased that we managed to get so many people to sign up for that. Questions for Ruben? No, it doesn't look like there are any. I reinforce what Ruben had to say about the LC Whip consultation sessions. I went along to there was a presentation before at the Royston Town Talk, and I went along to the Royston consultation session just to see how many people were turning up. And although I think it's fair to say that there's not an enormous number of people going to the consultation sessions, there are people who are going along to make some really significant inputs and identifying ways in which the plan might be improved. And I think that's really valuable for people to do that. So I encourage you all to go along and participate in those. Okay, so if there are no further questions for Ruben, there's a note in the chat from Sue. Will you please publicise the local? I mean, they are being publicised. I've seen them advertised. I mean, both in the council's official channels and via Facebook and things like that. I think one can always do more in terms of publicity, but I think it'd be really useful if interest groups were able to publicise them as well, because you reach to an audience that we don't get to. Okay. So I think that then moves us on to the public participation and presentations.
Steve, I had a question. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, Gerald. I didn't see it.
It's slightly off the subject actually, but I don't want to bring it up. It's about street lighting. Do you want to bring it up later or now?
I'll do it now. You've started.
Yeah. Is that a county thing rather than a district thing? Street lighting.
Yes.
Oh, that's the end of that.
You need to speak to your county councillor, which depending which bit.
It actually only occurred to me, so I thought I might as well bring it in as your county councillor as well. But there you go. Yeah, I'll bring it up. I'll bring it up with you at some stage.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Ed.
Thank you.
Okay, then we'll move on. If no other questions, we'll move on then to item 7 on the agenda, which is the presentations. And the first presentation is from Helen Pollock from the Hertfordshire LEP, talking about the clean growth strategy. So Helen, over to you.
Thank you. Let me just share my screen, and please, can't always see everything, so let me know if things aren't moving on, etc. Good evening, everyone. It's really lovely to be here and to see so many councillors all together in a select group. That's great. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about the opportunities for sustainability and for clean growth in Hertfordshire and the local enterprises' role in growing and developing a green economy. Can I just have hands? Does everyone know what the LEP is and who the LEP are? There's nods. Okay, that's fine. So I'm the LEP's new clean growth manager, and my role is really to accelerate clean growth and to help build a greener, more sustainable Hertfordshire economy. I thought I'd just outline what I was going to say. Let's just move the slides on. So I'm going to give you a little bit about the economic context and the drivers for clean growth and the significant opportunities that gives rise to Hertfordshire and our businesses. I'll talk a little bit about what the LEP's doing, and I will sort of talk about the clean growth strategy, its aims. It's got a two-pillared approach, which I'll explain, and then sort of outline some of the current activities that we're doing and the future priorities that we're involved in. So I think there's no longer any debate. Climate change has significant economic consequences, both at a global, but also increasingly so at a local level. It threatens mankind and influences all aspects of life, from the food security to air quality to flooding and storm damage to the health and well-being of our residents, our future economy. Businesses and industry account for about 25% of the UK's greenhouse gas emissions. SMEs make up about 99% of that business community and about half of those emissions within that sector. So businesses, large and small, all have an important role to play in meeting the net zero challenges, not only in helping us to protect our natural capital for future generations, but also, and perhaps more importantly, finding those solutions to meeting those net zero and climate change challenges. Mark Carney highlighted at COP26 that this is the greatest commercial opportunity of his age. I've been in the environment field for many years now, and I kind of agree with that. There are so many different aspects and stakeholders and organisations that are really engaging and getting involved in moving that. And I think that there is a real commercial opportunity that businesses and the economy can benefit from. So just to sort of give some economic context now, there are a large number of instrumental drivers out there. And I think some of the key instrumental drivers at the moment are that the UK is very much positioning itself to be a global leader for low carbon environmental technology. It has made that legal requirement to achieve net zero by 2050. And there's a number of key legislation and policies that are now in place to really drive forward clean growth, whether it be how we build our new homes, how we heat our existing buildings, or how we package our products, or the types of cars that we're likely to buy in the future. COVID has also shone a spotlight on climate change, the need for a better norm, and the government is using its extraordinary powers of intervention to build back better, to build back greener, and is putting a large amount of money into growing a green economy. When we think of Hertfordshire, we've got other drivers at a local level. Our population is expected to rise by 175,000 in the next decade. We're looking to build at least 100,000 new homes and create 100,000 new jobs over that same time period. We've got growth pressures on our borders from London, but also from the Cambridge Oxford Arc development that's sort of happening across there. So we've got a lot of growth happening, which is going to put further demand on our natural capital resources. So we need to think about doing things differently and in a more sustainable way. Coupled with this, I think you probably all know that all the local authorities have declared a climate change state of emergency. So there's action upon us to do things differently too. When we think about opportunities, I think it's important to recognise that the government is putting a lot of money and focus into building a green economy. And we need to make sure that Hertfordshire has access to that money and can benefit from that focus. The UK's green economy is expected to grow at about 4 times the rate of GDP. And there will be a lot of new jobs that are needed for us to meet those net zero targets that we have. The National Grid Energy Workforce Report suggested that 400,000 new jobs are just needed in the energy sector alone. The Committee for Climate Change stated about 200,000 jobs are needed to help decarbonise some of our homes that fall below the energy performance rating of C. So there's lots of opportunities there. And for businesses themselves, there are a number of benefits and opportunities for improving their environmental performance and moving towards net zero, which I'll touch on now. So I think, if you like, this is the business case for action. For businesses, I think the main one is cost savings through increased productivity and efficiency. This is particularly pertinent today with the rising energy costs, and we hear it in the households, but actually businesses are really going to suffer from this and going to continue to suffer from this going forward. So if they cannot use energy, they save themselves some money. Now is the time for a lot of businesses, I think, to pull out the old energy efficiency plans that have been in the cupboards and to reevaluate them with today's prices and to start taking some action. So I think there's case study after case study that show businesses who measure their energy use, their raw material use, can manage it more effectively and be more efficient and reduce their costs and help the environment too, so have an environmental benefit. Sustainability credentials has now and is increasingly starting to change from a nice to have position for businesses to a must have selling position. And we're seeing this more in the supply chain when businesses that are moving towards net zero have a more of a competitive advantage. And equally, we're seeing this in the financial markets too, in sort of the ability for businesses to access future investment opportunities. If they can show that they're moving towards net zero or thinking in a sustainable way, that sort of shows that they're, in a lot of cases, have good business sense and are more likely to get access to some of the money that they need to be able to grow. Interestingly, another benefit businesses are getting is that it improves, going towards net zero improves staff engagement. It takes a village community within a business also to make those changes, to make sustainability happen. And so businesses are benefiting from that staff engagement and also employee recruitment. I've mentioned risks in the table here. There are risks if businesses don't look to adapt to climate change. We're sort of hearing cases where, Google's services sort of got overheated in the summer and they were closed down. Temperature changes affect businesses just as much as our residents. So there's lots of opportunities there and the case for businesses to take action. So the role of the LEP is really to ensure the opportunities for sustainability and low carbon economic development in Hertfordshire are identified and maximised to really drive clean economic growth forward and to create those all-important employment opportunities to upskill our workforce to make change happen, as well as to manage some of the flow of and targeting of that government funding to secure maximum and long-term economic impact. So clean growth really underpins Hertfordshire's economic recovery plans, if you like, and our new sectorial growth plans. If you like, it is that good foundation, that golden thread that cuts across all our priorities associated with Hertfordshire's economic recovery. So the LEP has produced a strategy. Let's just move forward. Hang on a minute. You're not seeing a change, are you? Oh, here we go. There we go. So we've recently produced the Clean Growth Strategy. The principal aims of the strategy are to build a greener, more sustainable Hertfordshire economy and lead the way for clean economic growth. There are two main pillars of the strategy. One is focused all around growing and attracting low carbon environmental goods and services businesses. And the other is around supporting our existing businesses, our communities and our places as we all transition to net zero. So that under these pillars, we'll be future-proofing our businesses and our communities and places to be more resilient to climate change, and we support them as they transition to meet those challenging targets of net zero. But also we're it's focused on accelerating enterprise and innovation, collaboration and skills development to grow and attract a green economy. There are 7 main themes under the strategy. I won't go into detail with all of them. Perhaps just to mention the first one, and that one is really us needing to understand the value of Hertfordshire's low-cost environmental goods and services sector, so that we can support it more effectively. So one of my first jobs is to do a deep dive analysis of the sector and find out more about it, and therefore how we can support it to grow. Just moving on. Oops. So just to give you an idea of some of the activities that we've been doing, and to perhaps focus on the pillars of work. So under sector work and place clustering, this is all about our efforts, concentrating our efforts and really focusing on acceleration measures on impactful sectors that are going to make a difference, things like sustainable housing, agroscience, and also on places like Herts IQ, which is the enterprise zone, so we can achieve significant economic clean growth. So we're using Hertfordshire's assets like the university, BRE, the Building Research Establishment, Rothamsted Research, which do amazing things with agroscience. So using those assets and building on those assets to create green clusters, to really accelerate collaboration and innovation. And Herts IQ is all about creating much needed new commercial space for these businesses to grow into. Developing green skills. Well, a greener economy requires the support and the promotion and the expansion of relevant skills to enable our local residents to actively participate. So we're at the LEPS working closely in close partnership with the colleges and the universities and businesses to really identify the skills gaps and to develop relevant courses to meet our future businesses' needs and to create those employment opportunities. So I'm particularly focusing on retrofit skills where there's quite a bit of work to be done to try and upskill Hertfordshire's ability to be able to solve some of those issues. So that's quite interesting one. Under pillar 2, just to give you a bit of an idea, this is around supporting our existing businesses as they transition to meet the net zero challenges. The LEP's done a few net zero business campaigns to really highlight the opportunities for business growth and the social value opportunities of going down the sustainable route. We've done 10 top tips for carbon reduction. We've done business summaries for COP26. I seem to be forever promoting low carbon grants and funding opportunities. And of course, the Hertfordshire Growth Hub is the main portal, if you like, for businesses to come and get net zero advice and signposting help for specific Hertfordshire support there. So I'm going to just to touch a little bit more on some of that support, just to make sure that as you go and talk to businesses, that you've got a bit of an idea that there is support available, and if they signpost if you signpost businesses looking for support to the Growth Hub, or myself for that matter, then I'm very helpful. I'm very happy to sort of help them. And there's a low carbon workspace grant. This is a match funding grant of nearly £7,000 for energy efficiency measures. Eastern New Energy is a very big project and programme aimed at SMEs. It delivers a number of net zero free services, including grants. They do vehicle fleet auditing. Specifically for North Herts, actually, there's the Low Carbon Business Support Programme. This is a step-by-step net zero programme. I've given the website there because it's not necessarily an easy one to find, but this is taking a cohort of businesses together and sort of going through the process, the net zero journey with them, and helping them along the way. And Hertfordshire businesses can benefit from that one. There's innovation grants and co-investment opportunities rather. And I've mentioned the Growth Hub. The Growth Hub has on its website, it's got free carbon literacy training for workforce. It's got our 10 top tips for carbon reduction on there. There's on-demand videos, and there will be a lot more coming on there in the future. That's one of my priority areas, is to really try and improve some of the signposting and take a tsunami of information out there for businesses and really help guide them through that process. That's something that's trustworthy and applicable for them. And there are other organisations within Hertfordshire that are supporting businesses. Went have got a net zero programme. The Chambers of Commerce have got a green group, which is sort of helping businesses along and talking to each other. Biz for Biz will be launching another sustainability group programme for businesses. I think in December that's coming forward. So there's lots of opportunities there to help and support our businesses as they go forward. Oh, wrong one. Let's go one more slide to go. There we go. Bringing things all together, really. Perhaps one thing I haven't sort of said, and the strategy expands on, is that the LEP has really strong partnerships in place, working collaboratively with a wide range of organisations, like the Hertfordshire Growth Hub, like the Hertfordshire Climate Change Sustainability Partnership and the Growth Board, and the business groups like the Chambers of Commerce, etc. So we're all sort of working together to try and help deliver net zero. Net zero and clean growth can't be delivered by one organisation or business alone. It's very much a collective effort is needed. But I do think that Hertfordshire is well placed to grow and benefit from a clean and greener economy. And I think that's it from me. Thank you. Are there any questions? I'll stop sharing.
Okay, do we have any questions for Helen? Michael and then Gerald.
Thank you. A very comprehensive report. The thing is, you've mentioned all these grants that businesses can claim. How are you promoting that so that all the businesses in Hertfordshire, how are they going to find out? Because it's most important for them to apply for these grants. So how are you going to promote it?
The grant, a lot of the programs themselves are big programs, and they have a number of marketing tools that they're using as well. So they have their own, if you like, their own marketing team that's identifying businesses that it might help. Obviously, businesses that are contacting the Growth Hub, they're being signposted to this help. And in fact, I had a training event with a joint training event that Helen Burridge did at the, and I did to actually the business advisors, so really highlighting the business opportunities and the things on offer that they can offer businesses. So even if a business comes to them that's talking, you know, wanting help on another matter, you know, wanting to increase its productivity or looking at marketing and reaching a different audience, then the business advisors will now, hopefully after training last week, will sort of engage more with them on climate change and sustainability. So we've got the Growth Hub. We're using our business partners, our groups, so the Chambers of Commerce. There's other groups like the Hemel Hempstead Business Ambassadors. They will have newsletters, they have meetings, and we're sort of getting the information slowly out there. I think there's a lot more to be done. And I sort of welcome business connections and groups and newsletters that your local authorities have to get the information out, even though parish letters, just to let people know that there are these grants available, particularly for some of those voluntary organisations that are about. But we are using social media and various, you know, a multitude of different forms and conduits to get the message out.
Thanks very much. Gerald.
Steve, could I just come back and say, I appreciate all these things you've said, but you haven't actually said anything about the 10 districts or borough councils or the county council to push this out as well. So they need to be told of all these grants and how to apply for them.
We are slowly, hopefully, pushing that out because, you know, the LEP is part of the Hertfordshire Climate Change Sustainability Partnership, which has the sustainability offices of all the local authorities, and they are aware of these grants. I think sometimes they do focus on more on the resident side. So you know, our role in the LEP is to try and also push the business side of that. But is it businesses? It's where do they go? So, for example, I think a lot of the local authorities with the business rates renewals, invoices, if you like, there were letters with the low carbon grant available. So everyone that I know this happened for a number of the local authorities. St Albans did this. So everyone who got their business rates also got, you know, if you would want to take energy efficiency action, then there is this match funding grant available. So it is getting out there in places, but I'd welcome more opportunities to do things like that.
I think from my experience running a small business in North Herts for many years, I don't anymore, most of the people I dealt with didn't see local government as a prime source of business information. So I think we need to have it available, but we need to recognise that we're probably not the best conduit to the businesses we're trying to talk to on this. Gerald.
Thank you, Steve. First, Steve, it's a side question. Can councillors be blanked out, or is it all supposed to be visible? Just a question before I ask the question.
Seeing as this is not a formal decision-making meeting, I think it's probably up to them.
You know what I think of that, but anyway, okay. Right, thank you, Helen. You may not have the answer to my question, but anyway, these industrial development zones or areas, do you know whether they're obviously presumably tacked onto existing areas, industrial areas. Do you happen to know whether they would be on brownfield sites, agricultural land beyond Greenbelt or Greenbelt? You probably can't tell me now, but I'm just curious, really.
I think it would probably be wrong for me to comment on that one because I don't know the details.
Yeah, okay, lovely. Thank you very much. That's it. Thank you.
Val.
Thank you, Helen. That was really good. It's really good to see that the attitude to sustainable growth opportunities has changed from nice to have to must have. Do you have
changing? It's not there yet totally, but it's definitely we're seeing it. It's definitely seeing it in the supply chain.
And do you have any examples from North Herts of either good practice or anything exciting, any exciting opportunities, even if there are ideas at the moment that you could tell us about?
businesses per se, actually, if I'm honest, North Herts is not an area I know particularly well. As clean growth manager, I'm relatively new to looking at the whole of Hertfordshire. I'm more aware of what's been going on towards sort of Decorum and St Albans because of Herts IQ and what we're trying to do there. But I would say that that one opportunity, the low carbon, what was it, business support program, that's very specific for North Herts. We sort of managed to get that because actually it's Cambridge that Cambridge that are running it, and we just for strange reasons to do with maps and changing maps and stuff, we've just managed to catch on. North Herts just managed to catch on to that one. So I think that's quite a unique thing for North Herts. I know that there are businesses in North Herts that have benefited from the low carbon grant, so they've got some nice case studies. We can dig out some case studies if that would be helpful to try and work out what businesses have. But I don't really want to name a business per se at the moment because I need to check their geographical location.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Thanks so much. So.
It's a question really. Can you hear me? Have I done it the right way around?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, good. In talking to some of the small shops in the Wind when we were setting up the Green Festival, I've become acutely aware of the difficulties that some of these shops have in actually staying open because of the high energy bills that they've faced. And that's before this summer and autumn and what we're being faced with now. So I'm interested to know actually from Mrs. Pollock about it would be a sort of a two-stage thing of getting through to the landlords, like in this case it's the Heritage Foundation, to enable them to empower their tenants. Otherwise, I can see a lot of small businesses who are poorly insulated, and there's been no incentive for landlords to do very much up to now, actually closing, and we're going to lose a huge tranche to what I regard as a very valuable part of Letchworth. That's it.
Yeah, that's a really difficult conundrum. It is that landlord and tenant issue, and it's not an easy solution, to be honest, at the present time. And it's really dependent on the tenant driving some of those measures. Businesses might want to put a solar panel in, but it's whether the landlord will allow that, because the landlord doesn't necessarily benefit, but the business benefits. So there's lots of different measures. I mean, I would say to the small businesses themselves is to look at their whole, try and look at their whole situation. It's there may be other areas that they can cut their energy use by, if they've got various equipment or machinery, just maintaining that, increasing, ensuring the effectiveness and efficiency of that might actually help cut some energy costs. But it's having that conversation with the landlords. Now, I have been speaking to the Heritage Trust, the Letchworth Heritage Trust, and I know that they have plans to retrofit some of their buildings. They've got an issue of, some of their buildings are heritage buildings, so it's not an easy answer for them. It's more complicated because of the heritage issues that have to be sort of met there and what they can and can't do. But it is very much on their radar. And I think it's an ongoing challenge that we need to try and work together and sort out. But yeah, it's not being forgotten.
I mean, the interesting point there is, of course, landlords are businesses as well, and that some of the arguments you're making about the fact that their businesses will be more profitable if they reduce their buildings' carbon emissions, is something that presumably the LEP is trying to get across to that sector as well.
Yeah, and it makes their business, their buildings more attractive as well for tenants to go in. Tenants will move to warmer buildings if energy costs, and they are going to rise, are starting to bite. They'll look elsewhere too. So, but But big landlords, the big landlords and the housing associations, they're all the LEP is working together to try and address some of these issues.
Okay. Dear Linda.
Hi, everybody. Yes, I've got a couple of questions and some comments to you. Thank you for your presentation. The one following on from what has just been told, being discussed on local businesses. Some 10 to 12 years ago, I was involved in a group that were campaigning we were trying to establish Transition Town Hitchin. And one of the things we looked at was bringing to Hitchin a close the door campaign. The way the close the door campaign was encouraging businesses in the winter and in the summer to keep their front door shut and only opened as people needed to go in and go out, rather than constantly having the doors open and then what is a waste of energy, a hot air curtain or air conditioning curtain, which is very, very wasteful. And I remember being explained at the time that and I live in Hitchin, so this is part of what we were doing in terms of Hitchin, that effectively, not entirely, but effectively, the business properties in Hitchin, in the business heart of Hitchin, were in the hands of 2 Italian families that had almost complete control of the properties, and people rented the business, and it was just these 2 families that had complete control of the rents and whatever. And when you actually spoke to the businesses why they couldn't close the door or whatever, because it would be good for business, it would reduce their energy bills, and they would be more attractive to the customers with being able to run the business in lower prices. And this, remember, it was 10 to 12 years ago. They told me it makes no difference. The energy, the cost of the electricity or the gas or the energy and the heating and the lighting and all of that is built into the rent. So if they saved on on energy, the property owner benefited. The business doesn't benefit. So the business structure that we've got in Hitchin locally is actually counterproductive, and it doesn't help.
Yeah, I've not heard that one before. That's interesting.
The land owner profits from you saving energy. The business, the people paying the rent to use their property don't.
Okay, I think we understand.
I'd like you to bear that in mind. But the 2 things I wanted to mention from this is a similar scheme. Is it possible to run out of your loans or pots of money that you have to reduce carbon, to run something similar to what we're doing in terms of solar panels on houses, and that enables all the businesses on the high street to triple glaze their shop windows? Because if we were able to triple glaze, you'd reduce their energy. And if you can do in a sort of a system like you've done for solar panels in multiple properties, if you could do it across all the front shops in the high street, you'd reduce their energy, even if the landlord is involved.
I mean, we did say that businesses in suitable premises were able to express an interest in solar panels, but I think one of the issues comes back. I'll let Helen come in on this moment. One of the issues comes back to is the point you've just raised about the role of landlords in doing this business premises.
So let's bring back the campaign to close the door, and so that businesses feel comfortable leaving the door shut and people having to open the door to go in and out of the shops. And there used to be a sticker that says the door is closed, but we are open, please come in. And we can issue those to all the businesses on the high street and make it a campaign to help save energy this winter.
Yeah, I mean, I think that sounds a great idea. Just like what does I say? I saw a sign while I was driving today and it said something about reduce your speed, so, you know, just slow down, something like that, and take more time. And I just thought, if it said, you know, reduce your speed, keep your speed low, save money on fuel, take more time, that just save more money on fuel would just capture that could be on the board as you drive past the sort of the highway notices. I think that would be good. I think when it comes to closing doors, etc., I think that makes sense. When it comes to triple glazing, I think it depends on the building. I know that on retrofitting homes, that some of the retrofit grants, then when they get a retrofitter assessor going into a house and looking at what can be done, then actually moving from double glazing to triple glazing is not as effective as some of the other measures that need to be taken. So you need to really have a fabric first approach, and you need to look at the whole system. So I certainly wouldn't advise businesses to go down the triple glazing until they've sort of perhaps looked at other options that might save them more money.
Most window fronts on the high street are still single glaze.
Yeah, so
at least going double glazed. But if you're going to go double glazed, triple glaze is not that
is
much.
the answer. Yeah, I agree.
Okay, let's move on. Chris, you have a question.
Thanks, Steve, and thanks, Helen, for a really informative presentation. I was just wondering whether you had any more data about the take-up of those grants, especially the ones around energy efficiency across the county. And I suppose the other thing I'd like to ask is, obviously getting to net zero is a huge challenge, and the grants we've got at the moment are only going to take us so far. So I was wondering whether the LEP has any role, and what the LEP's thinking is in terms of going beyond the existing offers that we have out there.
So firstly, let's take them. What is the uptake of grants? I haven't got that information to hand. That is something that we can get, and we can. I believe we can look at that at a district level, so we can get an idea of the uptake of various grants. Probably got an email somewhere about it, but I can't dig it out now. Then the other thing is what's the LEP going to do? A lot of the funding here, yes, it's short term. Unfortunately, government does that, doesn't it? It does short-term grants and things. So the LEP, you know, we need to think about how can we do this in a more sustainable way, and maybe there's something with the local authorities and the Hertfordshire Climate Change Sustainability Partnership Group and the council we can actually start thinking about too. If I'm honest, I think there's got to be some other financial solutions which we can work on, but that's still for the future to try and work out. I'm not going to sort of say a specific model or approach at the moment because I can't, but it is definitely on our radar.
Okay, thanks so much. Just one couple of questions I had. I mean, I guess in most cases we're talking about reducing businesses' premises-based carbon emissions, but presumably some businesses have a significant amount of transport-related carbon emissions.
Yeah.
Are we providing with sort of help and advice on how they reduce those as well?
Yes. So the Eastern New Energy Programme, one of the things it can do is EV fleet audits, which can help a business make that business case decision about what route to do and what to go down. That sort of helps them when they're sort of trying to raise the money from board levels, etc. So I want to do a little bit more. I think there's more to be done, signposting businesses to other organisations that have quite a lot of material on this. The Energy Savings Trust has got a lot of good EV charging information. And I know that the local authority has got its EV strategy coming out soon, so that will have an influence too. So it's yes, so transport is a big issue that's got to be collectively solved.
Okay, and I guess one final question from me. I mean, most of what you talked about is targeted at small end of medium businesses. Are you doing things with micro and medium to large businesses as well?
I think a lot of the large, yes, I mean, the chambers of commerce, that's a good conduit to get to some of the bigger businesses as well. We know some of the bigger businesses, if I'm honest, a lot of the bigger businesses, they have legislation in place that's enforcing them to make action and changes, and a lot of them are leading the way in some of this activities. We've got Wilmot Dixon, who is really key on its net zero path, and it's a tier 1 construction company, and it's really starting to focus on the supply chain for that business and trying to get everyone involved. So a lot of the big companies will help lead the way in this too, but it's a combination of big and small. But yeah.
The micro
What's the question?
I guess, are difficult to deal with.
Sorry?
Micro ones are difficult, I guess.
The micro ones are more difficult, and that's where people like Wenta are quite helpful, because they have access to quite a few of the micro businesses. The micro businesses will be, micro businesses to operate and to work, they're much more into the social media and the networking, and the peer-to-peer sort of approach. So if we can sort of get into more of those networks, then we can help and we can help push those messages out.
Okay, thanks so much. Okay, I don't see any further questions. So thanks so much for your presentation, Helen. That was very interesting, and some good questions arose from that. And obviously, the council keeps it in touch with what the LEP's doing via the Arts, Climate Change and Sustainability Partnership. So we'll hopefully continue to hear what you're up to via that route as well. So thanks very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Okay. And you're very welcome to stay and participate in the rest of the meeting, or not, as you wish.
I'll probably go if that's okay.
Okay, fine.
All right, thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.
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 So next we have Georgina Chapman, who's going to talk about the carbon reduction subgroup of the Hertfordshire Climate Change and Sustainability Partnership. Georgina.
Yeah, I'm just going to share my screen. There's a bit about stuff that North Herts is doing outside of the partnership as well, but it's just some kind of quick updates. Can you see the slides? Do I need to press this?
We can see them, but if you go into presentation mode, they'll get bigger.
Am I in presentation mode now? I think I should.
You are now, yes.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, so just a couple of kind of updates from the Hertfordshire Climate Change and Sustainability Partnership about the most recent actions that they've been doing around carbon reduction. So the first one is they've produced a climate change training video for non-sustainability or non-climate officers within the council, and also for elected members. I think it's about half an hour. I'll put the link in the chat when we're finished. So we kind of we're going to share that more widely. But really anyone can watch it. It's a good kind of summary. And then the other thing that Ruben mentioned was the Solar Together scheme. So that was open for about a month for expressions of interest. They closed on the 27th of September. And as he said, we've had across Hertfordshire more than 13,000 expressions of interest, and 2,309 of those came from North Herts. It's more expressions than they were expecting. And so it's kind of been that's been really, really positive. And we came second. We had the second highest amount of expressions, just after St Albans. And because there's been kind of so many expressions of interest, they've divvied Hertfordshire up into 4 regions, if you like. And there's 4 winning installers, because I don't think it was possible to get one installer to kind of fulfill the demand. All the installers are local. So one is based in Hertford. I think there's 2 in Watford, and then 1 that is based in both Broxbourne and Enfield. 3 of them have been part of Solar Together installations in previous rounds of the Solar Together scheme that's been run elsewhere in the country, and 1 is a new installer. And then personal recommendations, so they should have been sent out to everybody yesterday, I think. And the average saving from the market, typical market price, was about 14%. And then everyone has until 25th of November, hopefully, to accept that decision, to decide whether to accept the recommendation. If I think it's unlikely that everyone will sign up, but if everybody is looking like they are going to sign up, the demand might be too high, and they might have to kind of email people and tell people that they need to make a decision before 25th of November as to whether they're going to accept the recommendation or not. And then the first installations are planned for either late December or early January. And we're going to get weekly updates as to how many people have signed up and how the installations are going, so we can kind of keep the panel updated on that as they happen. And then if we move to some of the carbon reduction projects that have been happening at North Hart. So one of the things we're working on at the moment that Ruben touched on is creating a summary of our carbon emissions assessments. So we had an independent consultant come and assess various aspects of our operations to give us a kind of carbon footprint, and that includes, in line with the greenhouse gas protocol, scope 1, which is gas and fuel from our vehicles, scope 2, which is electricity, and then various aspects of scope 3, which includes things like emissions from our key contractors, so emissions from John O'Connor vehicles when they do our green space management, and emissions from Abasa when they collect the waste, and emissions from the leisure centre, and things like mileage reimbursement and water and commercial waste and that sort of thing. There's hundreds of pages of documents in those, reports. And so the idea of the summary is to kind of have a snappy version that's publishable and easily digestible for everybody. So we'll bring that back when that's ready. And then we've got that kind of baseline, which is from April 2019 to March 2020 is the kind of baseline year. So then every year when we relook at emissions internally, we can kind of compare to that baseline year to see that hopefully we're going down, and hopefully kind of where we're going down as well. And then we've got the EcoStars Fleet Recognition Scheme. So this is something that happened a few months ago. So the EcoStars scheme is a kind of assessment scheme, and they look at how your fleet is run, and they kind of give ratings to individual vehicles in your fleet, but then they also look as a whole at how your fleet is managed. There's kind of 6 key pillars that they look at. So fleet composition, fuel management, driver skills development, vehicle specification and preventative maintenance, IT support systems, and performance monitoring and management. And then you're given anywhere between 1 and 5 stars, with 5 being the kind of top score. And we were awarded the top score, which was really good. We got 5. And then the idea is that they're kind of helping you to reduce your emissions and run your fleet in a more efficient way, so that you also improve air quality in the district. And they're also working to support Abasa and John O'Connor as some of our key contractors as well, which kind of links as well to the electric vehicle charging points. So we also had some extra electric vehicle charging points, 2 extra charging points with 4 sockets put in at the district council offices in Letchworth. And the idea of that is to kind of create the infrastructure to support the transition to hybrid and electric vehicles. There's a couple of points in our climate change strategy around transitioning first to hybrid and then to ULEVs, and then to fully electric vehicles. And one of the kind of, I suppose, teething problems we had when we started doing that was that the infrastructure wasn't kind of ideal to support it. And so that's part of kind of improving that infrastructure. And so we've currently got 2 ULEV enforcement vehicles, and then Careline have also got an electric vehicle, a fully electric van, and they're also waiting on 3 others that are on order. The green space management contract changes, there's some carbon savings from that as well, in reducing the frequency of the verge cutting. That's kind of taken some vehicles off the road, and there's also been an increased use of strimmers instead of the big ride-on grass cutting machines. So we've saved some carbon there. There's also some policies in the upcoming local plan which support low carbon development. So there's proposals to support low carbon energy, and a requirement for development proposals to reduce energy consumption via things like design, so the kind of materials that are being used, and also technology, and looking to kind of make sure that things are future-proof by considering future technology and future lifestyle changes as well. we're also having conversations around the new waste contract and various aspects of that, which is looking to go live in 2025. And carbon reduction is a key consideration in those discussions. So you may have seen the proposal to possibly move to a 3 weekly collection for refuse from what is currently fortnightly, which will save us carbon, partly because we have fewer vehicles on the road if we go down that route, and also because hopefully over time it will encourage residents to recycle more and generate less waste. And there's kind of other aspects that are being looked at as well to make sure that carbon reduction is a key priority for that waste contract. And then solar thermal at Royston Leisure Centre. So one of the actions in our climate strategy is around exploring how we can more sustainably heat our swimming pools, because we obviously have quite a few swimming pools in North Herts. And this action to get solar thermal at Royston is part of progressing that. And so procurement has currently begun on that. And then so we're looking to find a contractor to carry out that work. And then there's also plans for solar PV at the leisure centre, so North Herts Leisure Centre, Royston Leisure Centre, and also Hitchin Swimming Centre. So capital bids have been put in for the next financial year for all of those centres to have solar PV. So that will have to go through the typical approval process. And then we're also looking to see how APSI Energy, who we're a member of, can support us with designing and procuring and installing those projects for us. I think that's everything. The only other thing I was going to say, which is not related to carbon, but it's related to the last update that we gave about the HGCSP, which was on biodiversity. And we talked about an action around having 5 new ponds for the next 5 years to support greater crested newt populations. And people kind of seemed really interested in that action. And so the update is just that we're engaging with Natural England on that action. And my understanding is that greater crested newts are often something that kind of puts the brakes on development if they're found on a site where development is due to happen. And so the idea is that kind of creating these ponds for greater crested newts is going to be where any greater crested newts that are kind of hindering development can be moved to, so that they have a habitat. So we are engaging with Natural England on that one, and they are open to kind of, if you guys have specific ideas about where those ponds could be to support greater crested newt populations, then do let me know, and I can pass those on. Does anyone have any questions?
Okay, thanks so much. Yeah, questions for Georgina? Linda.
Hi, Georgina. Yes, a couple of questions from me. You've mentioned about charge points for electric vehicles, and you talked about the move to hybrid versus and electric. I'm wondering whether you are aware that there have been some studies that have actually shown that hybrid cars to be worse polluters than even fossil fuel cars. And the reason for that is because you're carrying dead weight. So while you're using your fossil fuel engine and your fossil fuel tank, you're carrying the extra dead weight of an electric engine and batteries. And when you're using the other, it's like driving the car around with a boot full of extra weight, like sacks of potatoes that you have no need to transport. So they actually found that hybrid cars in the end are more environmentally damaging than electric cars. So I wouldn't recommend or encourage people to use those. So I noticed you talked about solar thermal on Royston. Why not put it on all swimming centres, all swimming pools? Why only Royston in particular?
I didn't know about the study that showed that hybrids are potentially worse than the fossil fuel cars, but I've made a note of it, so we can maybe Steve and I can discuss that further when we kind of talk about the climate change strategy. And then with regards to the solar thermal at Royston, I think this is more just kind of first step test case to kind of see how it goes. it's not that we've ruled out, I don't think, in the long term, Hitchinson Centre or North Herts Leisure Centre.
It's just that I've had solar thermal on my house even from before I had solar PV added, and it's been heating our hot water, and it's been most effective. And so cheap, because it's far cheaper to install solar thermal than to solar PV. And if you've got large bodies of water, it's the most efficient way to heat transfer.
Yeah, there's certainly
generating electricity to then heat the water. That's very inefficient.
That's certainly the case. I mean, there are some slightly different considerations with installations, the size of those for public swimming pools, not least whether or not the roof structures can bear the weight of the solar thermal equipment and that sort. But Royston is being done because it's the smallest of the pools, so it's the best one to start with, and figure out how we do it best. But I would hope that all the pools in due course would have solar thermal and will have PV as well. And we are going to have to do more than that if we're going to eliminate any sort of fossil fuel heating of pools. Swimming pools and bin lorries are our two largest carbon emitters, and they both present some challenges in terms of how we get them to zero. But we have to take the steps we can. So yeah, I agree with you. It shouldn't just be Royston. It's just because Royston is the smallest pool, it was seen as the best one to start with.
That's all very encouraging. Thank you.
Chris.
Thanks again, Steve, and thanks, Georgina. You mentioned electric vehicle charging points. Will those be suitable for use by buses to support low carbon public transport as well as private vehicle use?
I think the ones that I was referring to are ones that have been put in the council's car park, specifically, I think, to support our transition to electric for our own fleet. So I'm guessing probably not for buses at this point, and I don't know. I'm not sure that we would. I'm not sure if that would be a county thing to do, to kind of provide EV charging points for kind of public transport. I think
an electric bus pilot scheme in Stevenage, but I don't know. I mean, clearly it must include charging arrangements. It's a joint venture essentially between the county council and Arriva, but I don't know what charging arrangements that includes. I imagine that you need fairly substantial amounts of power in order to charge electric buses, and I think that's something that
yes, they use different cables and different charge rates.
Yeah, I mean there is also some work being done to. I mean there are a few electric vehicle charging points in public car parks, and there are proposals to increase the number of those. And at some stage to work with the county council in terms of provision with some on-street charging in some areas as well. Electric vehicle charging is going a bit slower than I would like generally, but there are all sorts of issues about availability of power. I know there was one study that was done that identified that there was a pretty good correlation between the places where on-street EV charging was required and the places where there wasn't enough power to do it. And getting national power networks, UK power networks, to improve the robustness of electricity supply is sometimes quite time consuming. Ruben.
Thank you. Apologies, my broadband is being a pain today, so you've only got audio for now. In the Hertfordshire Bus Service Improvement Plan, which I'll put a link in with the minutes, they, as you said, Steve, they're talking about 30 buses at Stevenage, but they're also looking at wider. But again, it's about need, capacity, and all those sorts of things. So I think it's been actively looked at, Chris. And I think as funding becomes available and when this funding comes online, I think that's where they want to be. We'll just keep you in the loop, really, as we can.
The first electric bus in North Herts is likely to be one of the Herts links. On-demand buses. There are 3 of those, and they're going to add 2 more, one of which is an electric one. So that's likely to be the first electric bus we have, I guess. Although it won't be charged in North Herts, it'll be charged up at East Herts, I believe. Are there any other questions for Georgina? Okay, that moves us then on to item 8, which is agenda items for future meetings. Now there is a work plan for future meetings, which I just need to get back on my screen. So this meeting was targeted at carbon reduction. The proposal was that the next meeting on the 11th of January should address air quality, which I think is something that one of the subjects that we've not talked about very much at all in this panel over the years it's been in operation. And is, from a local government point of view, a slightly curious arrangement, because clearly a significant proportion of air quality issues are related to highways and transport. And the district council is responsible for the air quality, but the county council is responsible for most of the things that cause problems with air quality. I know accept that it's not entirely vehicle based, but there are clearly some interesting discussions we could have. And I would hope we could not just talk about the air quality management areas where the quality is known to be worse, but air quality more widely across the district. What we're doing to measure it, to determine how it's changing, and what we can do to influence it in the future. So those would be my suggestions of the sort of areas that we ought to be covering in the air quality session at the next meeting. But I'm very happy to hear suggestions from anyone else as to what we should be including. So we can't hear you. You're muted.
Sorry. Okay. Cars idling outside schools, outside takeaways, places like that. I'm often very aware of the long queues of cars, all with their engines going. I have no solution to this, but I think it's something where perhaps it's a publicity stroke information campaign that's required. I don't know how you get people to switch off if they're going to get cold. They don't like sitting in cold cars. That's really what it's about.
Or indeed very hot ones in the summer. I mean, I think you're right. It's a question of changing people's opinions, isn't it, about that to a large extent? But I think that's an interesting issue. Can we add that? Because I think that's something that I know a lot of people are concerned about. So we can include that in our next meeting.
Could I raise another one, please? It's allied. It leads on from, in a sense. It's about speed of cars in different parts of the town. Now, I noticed that Letchworth Town Centre has a 20s sign up, but actually, I wonder about other roads in the neighbourhood, in the area. For example, I live in Bedford Road, which leads into the town. Huge speed, huge traffic, large noises as things go over speed humps. There's no kind of restriction, apart from obviously they should be obeying the law. But is this being considered in terms of the carbon and the emissions? Because it just really, well, obviously it bugs me personally.
I mean, management of traffic speeds and speed limits is a matter for the county council. I mean, there are those who argue that reducing speed limits from 30 to 20 doesn't have a big impact on carbon emissions. I think it probably depends what assumptions you make. And I think a move to electric vehicles would certainly see a reduction in the air quality impacts in terms of particulates and that kind of thing. And the county council has a list of places that might one day have 20-mile-an-hour speed limits. I think it's fair to say that I'm not entirely in favour of the way that Hertfordshire is going about it, and think they ought to do it a lot quicker. And the district council has passed a motion essentially supporting that view, that the county should just get on and do it. But that's, I'm afraid, not something that we can tell them to do. We can encourage them. But yeah, I think clearly traffic speeds have an impact both on carbon emissions and potentially on air quality issues as well. I mean, not so much from exhaust emissions, but certainly from particulates from tyres and brakes and things of that sort. But essentially, we have to try and persuade the county council to do something about vehicle speeds.
Thank you.
Anybody else, anything they would like to raise in terms of our next meeting on air quality? The final meeting of the year is proposed to be talking about achievements. So essentially what progress we've made on the things that we've been setting out to do. And that meeting is in February. So that will hopefully be a fairly wide-ranging meeting where we talk about what we think we've managed to achieve in terms of carbon reductions, biodiversity improvements, water, air quality, waste minimisation. And obviously there's more progress on some of those than others, but I think it's important that we look at where we've actually got to, because we've talked a lot in these meetings over the last couple of years about what we could do, and some of it will take a long time to make significant progress on, but other things we've made some short-term progress on. So hopefully we can review that, but we can have another discussion about the detailed contents of that meeting in this part of the next meeting. So I think if we've now got to the end of the meeting, unless there's any more inputs on what we might want to cover at future meetings. So thank you very much for your participation, and good night.
Bye, everybody.
Good night.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.